It is the 76th minute. Arsenal are winning the Champions League final. With 10 men, their goalkeeper was sent off in the 18th minute. They have been holding Barcelona out for nearly an hour. 1-0, 14 minutes from the greatest night in the club's history. Then Eto'o turns inside the box. 1-0. 7 minutes later, Belletti cuts in from the right. 2-1. It is over. Arsenal walked off that pitch in Paris, having been closer to the Champions League than at any point in their entire history. That was 20 years ago. They have not been back since. Until now. But Arsenal is not the story. Arsenal is the entry point. Because what this video is really about is a pattern that runs through some of the biggest clubs in football history. Clubs that had everything the competition demands, and still kept walking away empty. By the end of this, you will see why. The Champions League is the hardest trophy in club football to win. Not because the competition is long, not because the draw is unfair, but because it has a specific quality that separates it from every domestic league and every other cup. It punishes clubs that are almost right. Not weak clubs, not poor clubs, almost right clubs. And there are several of them whose names you know very well. Start with Juventus. 9 finals, 2 wins, 7 losses. No club in the history of this competition has lost more finals than that. 7 times Juventus prepared, qualified, and reached the biggest night European football offers. 7 times they went home without the trophy. But the number alone does not tell the story. 2 moments do. 1997. Juventus were the reigning champions. They had Zidane, Del Piero, one of the most complete squads in European football. They faced Borussia Dortmund in Munich and lost 3-2 after being 2 goals down inside 35 minutes. A squad that good, beaten that cleanly. Then, 2003. Juventus against AC Milan, a final between 2 clubs from the same city. The game finished 0-0 after extra time. Penalties? Juventus missed 3 penalties in a Champions League final against their city rivals. After that night, something in Juventus and this competition shifted. They kept reaching semi-finals. They reached 2 more finals in 2015 and 2017 and lost both. But those 2003 penalties felt like the moment the door began to close. Because here is what the Juventus story reveals. When the margin disappears completely and the competition comes down to the finest possible edge, Juventus have consistently been on the wrong side of it. Not because of lack of talent, because of something in how they perform when the structure is removed and the game becomes pure nerve. Now take that idea and watch what happens when it gets more extreme. Atletico Madrid have reached 3 Champions League finals. They have won none. But it is not the number. It is the specific cruelty of how they lost. 2014. Atletico versus Real Madrid in Lisbon. Atletico had no business being in that final on paper. Their budget was a fraction of Real Madrid's. Their manager, Diego Simeone, had built everything on discipline, structure, and collective belief. For 90 minutes it worked. They were 1-0 up going into injury time. 4 minutes of added time on the board. The players knew it, the staff knew it. Everyone in that stadium knew Atletico were about to win the Champions League. 93 minutes. Sergio Ramos rose at a corner and headed the ball into the net. 1-1. Atletico lost 4-1 in extra time. They had been 1 minute away from the most unlikely Champions League title in the modern era. 1 minute. And the competition took it back. 2 years later, in 2016, they reached the final again. Same opponent. Same result. Ramos scored again in the final minutes to force extra time. Atletico missed twice in the shootout. Real Madrid won their 2nd title in 3 years. 2 finals, 2 times, within touching distance. Twice the competition said no at the exact last moment. Think about what that does to a club's identity. Think about whether a group of players who have lived through that can ever fully trust the final minute again. That is the question that sits underneath the Atletico story. Atletico's 2014 story is one of the most painful in this competition's history, and the version most people know is just the Ramos header. They never hear what Simeone said privately after that final. That is the part that stays with you. For over 10 years, Paris Saint-Germain sat on this same list. Qatar took over the club in 2011 and turned them into one of the wealthiest clubs on earth. Neymar, Mbappe, Messi. Three of the most expensive players in football history in the same squad at the same time. The Champions League rejected them every single year. Early exits, semi-final collapses, a final loss to Bayern Munich in 2020. Year after year, the squad looked unbeatable in October and unrecognizable in April. Then something changed. Not the budget, the identity. PSG stopped assembling the most expensive collection of individuals and started building a team with a clear shape and a clear way of playing under pressure. Leaner squad, sharper identity. Last year, in 2025, they went to Munich and won the Champions League. The club that had been rejected for over a decade became champions the year they stopped trying to buy their way past the problem and started solving it differently. That is not a coincidence. That is the exact argument this video has been building toward. Which brings everything back to Arsenal. May 26, 2026, Budapest. Arsenal, in the Champions League final for the first time in 20 years. Against PSG, the reigning champions. The club that just proved the wait can end. Arsenal have spent 2 decades building toward this. The squad Wenger had in 2006 was talented, but stretched. The squad Arteta has built is different. Structured, clear. A team that knows exactly what it is. Whether that is enough will be answered on the night. But the clubs in this story have shown us what the competition does to clubs that arrive without a fully settled identity. Juventus had greater individual quality than almost any opponent they faced and still lost 7 finals. Atletico had one of the finest defensive structures in modern football and still could not hold the final minute twice. PSG had more money than anyone, and it did not matter until they found the one thing money cannot buy. Arsenal know all of this. The question is whether knowing it is enough. Here is what this pattern actually shows. The Champions League does not reject clubs because they are weak. It exposes clubs that have not fully answered one question about themselves. Not tactically, not financially. The question is simpler than that. Who are you when the structure disappears, the score is level, and the competition asks you to make one more decision under the most pressure you have ever felt? Juventus answered that question 7 times and got it wrong. Atletico answered it twice, in the 93rd minute, and could not hold. PSG kept getting that question wrong until the year they finally understood what the question was actually asking. Arsenal step onto that pitch in Budapest carrying 20 years of the answer they never got to give. Whatever happens on the night, the pattern is clear. This competition does not care how much talent you have. It cares who you become when the talent is not enough on its own. If this video opened something for you, subscribe. The next story in this series goes deeper into the moments football history never fully explained. Turn on notifications.